This is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions regarding this watch. Today, we're discussing one of my favorite model lines from Devon Works of California. This is the Tread 2, and the specific variant is Tread 2 Nightmare. Back when Devon launched the Tread 2 in 2013, this was one of the original variants. More than the original Tread 1 in that it also includes a chronograph complication. It's also a much more wearable watch with black DLC over stainless steel and a size much more wearable than the massive Tread 1. So here with the tonneau profile, we have a case that is 41.7 millimeters from side to side, not including the crown assembly, 15.5 millimeters thick, and then from lug tip to lug tip, 56.6 millimeters, and Devon uses a substantial proprietary strap design. So you'll have to get the strap from them, but they do work with custom builders to offer custom straps on request. Taking a look at the watch, you can see it's much more viable on a smaller wrist than the enormous Tread 1. The Tread 1 was comfortable on a small wrist. It was just freaking huge. This watch is still very large, but it's no longer huge. As you can see, it's got a bit of an RM presence on the wrist. The tonneau shape is a good one for a vertically oriented time display. It's not thick, but it's not thin. It's not going to disappear underneath the cuff. And you can see that although this is sort of a blackout California look with the Nightmare, it's not difficult to read. It's not black on black. It's not a black to use the Omega parlance. And then across the wrist, I would say you could wear this on a wrist of my size or larger. So let's say 16 centimeters circumference and up. Strap is a nice piece. As you can see, it's thickly bolstered. I believe there's actually a hard insert at the end of these straps to ensure that they mate perfectly with the case flank. And then the remainder is heavily bolstered calfskin. A little bit of a contrasting stitch. You can see the gray stitch in the black strap, just like the gray numerals on the black belts. So this is sort of the motif that dominates the watch. On the bottom, you can see it's a Devon factory strap, brand new, lined with calfskin, and the buckle, just like the watch itself, is Devon branded with a nice distinction between polish and satin, DLC stainless steel. So a good looking watch on every front. Taking a closer look at the case, you can see that it's a soft form, so it has a nice fluid flow from side to side, although we do have these sort of pincers that hold the strap fast, adding a little bit of a harder visual look. There are some marks of wear here, though the DLC on these tends to hold up quite well. And we have a brushed bezel. You can see in profile there are polished details. So black on black can be contrast as long as you have something like media blast and polish or satin and polish. This crystal was a big deal when it arrived in 2013 because the Tread 1, due to the sheer size of its crystal and the vulnerability of a huge unsupported sapphire, Tread 1 used polycarbonate. This is actual sapphire, so it's the first Devon watch to have a sapphire crystal. It's also the first Devon watch to have any degree of water resistance. So this is secure against splashes or rain, but it's 1 ATM, it's 10 meters, it's a non-submersible water resistance, but the Tread 1 had no water resistance, so this is actually moving up quite a bit. Now the watch includes a lot of fascinating features, such as a constant seconds mode you can activate, just as I did. When the watch is in time-telling mode, you hold the blade-like mechanism down, and this was inspired by tactical knives. You've got a button, and then you've got this blade that moves in two directions. And so by holding it down, you can put the watch in constant seconds mode. It uses a inductively charged lithium-ion battery. You actually charge it on its stand. And if you were to just leave it dormant, it can go 20 days between charges. You should always charge it after 20 days, even if it hasn't been in use. When it is in running seconds mode, it's going to be typically about 7 days of operation on the rechargeable battery. And then if you have it with the running seconds mode disabled, it will run between 10 and 14 days. A full charge on the inductive charger takes about 8 hours. There are other things going on here. I'm going to demonstrate the power reserve mode. So when you turn the watch off, this is the best way to store it if you're not going to be using it. You just push the crown quickly. 12 is the hour that defaults, and then there's this power reserve. So you can see it's pointing to 0.5. That means the battery is 50% charged. It is a great piece of theater to start this watch up. Now, early versions of the Tread 2 used a single deflection of the blade to activate the chronograph mode, and later on, the models used a double deflection to prevent accidental activation. They can also be updated. If you have one of the original ones, the firmware can be updated. Reach out to Daryl Hardy, who does the service on these things at Devon. He's definitely your contact for anything Devon. So now, by pushing down and pulling up, I've put the watch into chronograph mode. So press the trigger. Although it only has one pusher, it works like a conventional start-stop reset. So, for instance, I can stop, but then I can also resume. That's how the reset works. Pull it back up. That puts it back in time-telling mode. Now, I like to actually have it in running seconds mode because I think that's more fun. Just keep in mind, it does actually have a pronounced vocalization, so listen. I don't know how well you can hear that, but it's definitely too loud for a meeting. That's the real reason the silent mode exists. Now, if you think about this, it is both a regulator, a jump hour, and I guess you could say it's a regulator, a jump hour, and a jump minute, because we have a separation of the hours and the minutes, and then they both jump. So the watch includes two motors, one here, and they operate on the basis of optical scanners that actually know where the belt is. So it's always centered. If you're wondering how the index is always perfectly aligned, it's because the microprocessor that powers this watch knows where the belt is relative to the index. And so you have optical sensors for both of them. The motors are actually from medical pumps, things that can't afford to fail. And that was the first choice for repurposing technology to use in this watch. They also spin on unlubricated ruby roller bearings. Because of the relatively low rate of rotation, they're able to operate without lubrication, which is the lowest friction scenario, but it's only possible with a relatively slow rate of rotation. That's why, for example, ruby pivots in standard mechanical watches don't operate unlubricated, except for the ruby pivot for the anchor. That's increasingly common. Now here, you have those motors, you have the optical sensors, you have the ruby pivots. You also have belts that are made of a combination of nylon with fiberglass reinforcement, and they're only 2/1000ths thick, which is incredibly impressive. And it's also worth mentioning that they come from analog aircraft instrumentation. So the suppliers that continue to provide belts and gauges for the instruments in 20th century aircraft, they use the same supplier that produces the belts for this watch. Of course, it is quartz, and it's a very high-grade quartz at that. It is thermocompensated, so it has the ability to adjust the timing of the watch to remain isochronous and precise in spite of very hot or very cold temperatures. And so that's something I really cannot overemphasize. The watch is a sophisticated device. It is not cheap consumer electronics. There are Devon Treads that were launched back in 2010 that are still in service today. It's designed to be a long-term product, not one that you throw away the way you throw away your phone. The microprocessor, in addition to having a thermocompensation capability, can also remember the time. So, for example, if you turn the watch off or you decide to stop the scroll of seconds, when you reactivate the seconds, it won't go back to where it stopped. It will go back to the correct second for the time you were in now. So the microprocessor keeps track of the seconds and the minutes and the hours, even when the watch is not running, even when the watch is in standby mode. In terms of the battery, there's just a couple of pieces of advice I've got for you. Whether you're using it or not, charge it every 20 days. It'll take about 8 hours to charge from complete exhaustion, and when it runs down to the point that it's no longer functioning, it still has the ability to go onto the charger, recharge, and resume functioning. If you were to leave it for months, though, it goes into a self-preservation mode that requires a factory reset. So don't allow it to bottom out so completely that the factory reset becomes necessary. That's why I always recommend people charge it every 20 days, and Devon would recommend that as well. Also, don't leave it on the inductive charger indefinitely. 8 hours from dead to fully charged, and then take it off. The watch is remarkably cool, and you will get more comments on this than any Grubel Forsey, Richard Mille, or Erwerk that you own. And service in the USA is a different matter than Switzerland. Generally, it's pretty quick. They keep you in the loop, and they're very efficient about doing it. You can see on the back, made in California. It's also serviced there, and that is a big part of the appeal, at least for me. I'm a big fan of American manufacturing, and this is one of the coolest examples I've seen in a long time. It's a lithium-ion battery. It's a high-grade thermocompensated quartz, and it is a belt-driven display system unlike anything you will see, except perhaps on a Tread 1. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.